That's the former Trade Secretary Liam Fox. He's in Bahrain and joins us now. Thank you very much for being on the programme. I want to talk to you about the Middle East and the reason that you're in Bahrain in a minute. But first, just to pick up on what we were just discussing with Sam Coates and the Prime Minister's speech today. Is now the right time to cut taxes, Sam?
It's always the right time to cut taxes if you can do it. But I think there's another element to the debate that wasn't touched upon there, which is not just tax and spend, but how do we generate more wealth in our economy? And I am very keen that we get taxes down, and particularly to small businesses. Over 82% of all the jobs in our economy are in the private sector. 69% of those private sector jobs are in small and medium businesses. So we need to give them a bit of a break. After the pandemic, many are still struggling a bit, and I hope that we can help get their tax burden down too, because ultimately they're the ones who generate the wealth and the jobs upon which all our spending in the future will depend.
Interesting to hear there, perhaps a bit of a call for something on business taxes as well in the autumn statement on Wednesday. The other thing is, in the speech today, we were given 5 new pledges to remember, in addition to the 5 pledges in January, so reducing debt, cutting tax, building domestic energy, backing business, providing a world-class education. I mean, are you guys in the Conservative Party going to need flashcards to remember all these pledges now?
I didn't see this speech today, so I wasn't aware of that. But I think it's pretty much setting out mainstream Conservative policy, isn't it? These are all things that a mainstream Conservative government would want to do with the economy, lowering the tax burden on working people. That tax burden went up a lot, not least because we had to pay for the pandemic and maintain businesses through that period. We're going to, I hope, now get a more benign economic outlook where we'll not have the shocks of the Ukraine war, not have the shocks of the pandemic, and where we can plan. And with inflation coming down, most of that headroom will be generated by the fact that the government will be paying a lot less in debt interest on our national debt. That's a big relief, and that can potentially create quite a lot of, as you say, so-called headroom.
At the same time, though, is the economic situation as good as everyone's saying? Inflation's still twice the Bank of England's target. Growth is effectively zero. It's flat as a pancake. It's not that much room to play with.
Well, there will be, because at 10% inflation, your debt interest is something like 106 billion. If that is halved, you get a big reduction in that. Of course, the Chancellor won't want to bank on all of that, and he'll want to, of course, keep his options open for his budget in the spring. But I think the signals that are being sent is that that the Conservatives are a low tax party. It's not an abstract thing. We believe in low taxes because it reduces the size of government, it maximises the choices that individuals can have, and it increases the incentive for people to work hard and create wealth. That's really the difference between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party.
OK. One more question to squeeze in before I ask you about the Middle East. David Cameron took a seat in the House of Lords today. Does it look a bit, I guess, odd that, you can just get a peerage just like that if the Prime Minister decides he wants you in Cabinet?
Well, it happened to Peter Mandelson, didn't it? It's happened before. It's not something that's completely out of place. In our Constitution, it's something that's allowed. Whether you think it should be allowed or not is another matter, but it is allowed, and it brings someone with enormous experience back to government. And goodness knows, international affairs are quite a challenge at the present time.
OK. You're in Bahrain. What are you up to over there?
Well, this has been the weekend of the Manama Security Dialogue, of course, completely dominated by events in the Middle East. And every session ended up back talking about Gaza. There's a huge amount of anger and a lot of angst here. Anger at the level of civilian casualties, but also anger at the way Hamas have been using civilian infrastructure to create human shields, for example, using hospitals as their base. And I think there's a feeling that something really needs to change, that the talk about a two-state solution has been going on, too long. Something now needs to happen. And when something does happen, it has to do 2 things simultaneously. It's got to protect Israel from the sort of terrorist attack that we've had, but it's got to give the Palestinians, sooner rather than later, autonomy and self-determination. So there's a lot of talk about the way forward, and mostly in the things that can't be done. It's not acceptable for an Israeli continued occupation of Gaza. I don't think the Israelis themselves want that, in fact, because they pulled out more than a decade ago. It's not possible to see a diminution of the size of Gaza. And then, of course, there is what can be done and who will take responsibility for it. Quite a lot, interestingly, here talk about a potential British role, given Britain's history with the mandate in Palestine and Britain's good relations with Israel and so on. People, I think, feel that maybe Britain's not doing quite enough to push forward some of our own ideas.
What do you think those ideas should be that Britain could potentially push forward?
Well, I think very much that there needs to be a two-state solution, but a two-state solution that guarantees everyone's security. And then there's also the question.
Just to jump in on the two-state solution, if I can, do you think the Israelis really believe in a two-state solution?
Well, this has been something that's been discussed very widely here, that the talk is always we believe in a two-state solution. And when I was talking to a lot of representatives of Arab governments here, their view was this has gone on too long. It's time now for action. And I think there's a feeling that holding up belief in a two-state solution has, in many occasions, been a substitute for actually doing something concrete. So I think there's a frustration here on that. I think there's also frustration about the role of Iran. A lot of those I was talking about Iran funding Hamas, and a lack of clarity about Israel's military aims, because you can certainly degrade Hamas as a military entity, as a terrorist group, but the mindset of Hamas that Israel shouldn't even exist is something that is echoed very loudly in Tehran. And, it's very difficult to see how you can get a peaceful solution, how you can get a two-state solution when neither Hamas nor Iran believe that Israel should be there at all. So there are very big questions that need to be dealt with as ever. But what I have detected here is a sense of urgency that I've not known before.
There's been some talk as well about a potential Israel-Hamas hostage deal that could be done in the coming days. Did you have any sense where you are about whether that could actually happen?
Well, I think there's growing optimism that it's possible, and I think that people feel that this is a necessary first step to any political negotiated settlement that will come sometime in the future. Obviously, for the Israelis, the freeing of the hostages is absolutely key, because you simply can't accept terror groups abducting your citizens, men, women, and children. But there's also a feeling here that some of the Palestinian prisoners being held, especially longer term, is not a viable situation. So I think that everybody is looking for a way forward. I think some of the disclosures we had today of Hamas using tunnels under a hospital has horrified a lot of people. But it's also fair to say that people feel, as Prime Minister Netanyahu has admitted, Israel has not been successful in minimizing civilian casualties as it has sought to degrade the Hamas terrorist network. All in all, a pretty depressing picture.
Thank you very much. Really interesting to get that perspective. Thank you.